All right, so with this unit, you're going to be learning about functions, which is similar to what we've done before, but not exactly the same. So I'll walk you through it, though. This is target 2A. First things first, our objectives. You're going to learn to represent functions as rules and as tables. You're going to be able to identify domain and range, and that's it. Some vocabulary for you. A function is a rule that establishes a relationship between two quantities, called the input and the output. For each input, there is exactly one output. Um, a function looks a lot like an equation. It basically is an equation. The only difference is instead of using y, like you might have seen slope-intercept form where it's like y equals mx plus b. So you might have an equation that's y equals, 2x plus 4. Instead of that y, we're going to replace that y with f of x. They're essentially the same thing. So that could also be like g of x, or could be like g of s if we change the equation to this. So basically, whatever's in the parentheses is going to be your variable in that equation. Okay, so, but don't worry too much about that just yet. We'll get into it. Okay, so that means that you're going to have an x value that has, you can have an x value that has two separate y values, and it will not be a function. Okay, so if I had like, let's say I had a table and I had 2 points here. I had 2, 1, and 2, 3. And I was looking at a graph, that would not be a function because this x, because remember these are x and y, I have the same x, 2, that has two different outputs, which is y. Domain, it's a collection of all input values. Okay, this is the x value, so domain equals x. And then range is a collection of all the output values, which is the y value. So range equals y. Okay, this is also called the input. This is also called output. That's important. So write this down. X, domain, and input are the same, and y, range, and output are the same. So as long as you have all different x values, you're fine. You can have y values that are the same, but your x values have to be different. All right, so taking that into consideration, do the following sets of points represent a function, and why or why not? So look at this. So this is our x's. We have 7, 6, 7, and 11, and our y's are 1, 2, 3, and 7. So if we were to write the domain, okay, they do not represent a function because we have 1, 2 7s, okay? So there can only be one input or one x for a given output or y. So there are two x's that are the same but have different y's, so it's not a function because this y is a 1, that y is a 3. These set of points do represent a function because we've got our domain would be 5, 6, 8, and 11. And our range, even though we have 2 twice, remember I said it's okay for the y's to have that. So our range would be 2, 4, and 7. Okay, so that's okay if they're the same, as long as each of these is different. So maybe go and underline all your x's or circle them or whatever. And if you see any number twice, that means it's not a function. Okay, so as long as there are unique inputs, more than one output can have the same, more than one input can have the same output. In other words, as long as all the x's are different, it doesn't matter that there are y's that are the same. So look at this one here. The input-output table shows temperatures over various increments of time. Identify the domain and range. Remember, I said that input is x, output is y. This is also called domain. This is also called range. All right, so domain is 0, 2, 4, and 6, all of our x values. Our range is all of our y values, 24, 27, 30, and 33. Easy enough. Okay, so in this example, I want you to identify the domain and range of functions. So pause this and write down the domain and range and see if you can figure it out. It's actually pretty easy, especially since I labeled it x and y. So the domain is 0, 4, 7, 8, and 11. The range is 1, 4, 9, 10, and 13. Hopefully you're getting this. If not, slow it down and try and see that domain. Try and make yourself find a way to understand that this is the domain And this is the range. Remember, x is always domain, y is always range. So now is this table a function? Why or why not? So now we've got names and ID numbers. So this is different than working with just numbers. So our input value is the student name, our output value is the ID number, or X and Y. So we've got Mary, Mike, Eric, Aaron, Bob, and Scotty. They're all different. So it is a function because each of the input values, their names, are unique. In this example, see if it's a function or if it's not. We've got Brandy, Carl, Donna, Brandy, Ryan, Joe. Oh, look, Brandy appears twice. So that table is not a function because each of the input values, the student names, are not unique. In other words, well, this is kind of a bad example, but Brandy couldn't do 2 sports at once. This is assuming this is all the same season, which obviously I know sports aren't, but just for the sake of this, we're using that. Okay, basically just look for the name that appears twice, if it does. And that's it. So hopefully you guys can understand that and not have a problem with it too much. If you have any questions, though, feel free to ask in class.